All right, welcome back to the channel. Today in a starting with episode 1 and multiple episodes to come, series of episodes is going to be a complete detailed DIY rebuild of a BMW E36 M3 S50 motor assembly. The block that you see here already been, as you can see, has been disassembled, cleaned. Block has been sandblasted. The block has been painted with a rust primer, multiple coats, and then the high temperature black paint. So first step that we want to do here, in addition to that, we've already done our ABCs on each cylinder bore, the different levels, 1, 2, 3 along the stroke. And so that's all done. The block is ready for reassembly. Now, as first part of our reassembly, we're going to do our ring and gap measurement in each cylinder. That you guys can see here, we've still identified each of the new rings with, and I've labeled 1 through 6. So as we measure them, we're going to want to make sure that we keep them numbered and for the correct bore. So we're going to do that first. Then we're going to check the deck height. We'll do a feeler gap check measurement on the deck height. So let's get to it. Okay, so what we've done is we've set the number 1 compression ring inside each of the cylinder bore right up to the top. Keep in mind, these rings, you have to make sure they're either going to be stamped with a top or any type of letters. Letters or the word top should be on top. You can see these are stamped with an N, so that's facing up. So typically you would, standard practice, everyone would indicate square the rings up with the piston and then check the gap measurement. So we're going to be checking the measurement at 3 positions. You guys can see that the first position will be 10 millimeter from the top. Second position will be about 42-43 millimeters from the top. And then the last position will be right around 75 millimeter. This is a 85 millimeter, 85.5, 85.6 millimeter stroke. So the idea is that you want to be able to measure your bottom measurement 10 millimeter up from the stroke, and then the top measurement 10 millimeter in from the deck height, and then the middle measurement is right in between of those two. Okay, so I'm gonna use my piston to push these rings down a little bit, but I don't really utilize the pistons to make sure that the ring is in the correct position. I'm going to show you guys what I do here. Okay, so like I said, I'll use the pistons to push the rings down, but then to set my 10 millimeter measurement, I've got a digital dial caliper, and I've got the depth base attached, and I've got it set and locked at 10 millimeter. So once I get my ring down, I'm going to use this against the height of the deck to set my rings at 10 millimeter on each. Then I'm going to take the measurements across 1 through 6, and then I'm going to go down to the middle position, repeat the same thing with the dial in the digital caliper, and then take my measurements and repeat that for the last set of measurements. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'll show you. So number 1 here, I just get this down here just a little bit, not too much. Now we're going to set our measurement at 10 millimeter all around. So this gives me an exact position and a consistent and uniform position of my ring in my bore. The piston, when it puts down the ring, it tends to skews it a little bit, and it tends to throw your gap measurements off. Especially when you're on the borderline of your ring and gap measurement, you want to be as precise as possible. Okay, you guys can see we've got uniform measurements all the way across. Okay, one more note. When I set the rings in for gap measurement, I like to duplicate the way that they're going to be positioned on the piston. So with this one here, all of them, the gaps are positioned at the same position, and that's typically how they're going to be orientated in the piston before installation. Okay, so let's take our gap measurements and then we'll proceed to the middle measurement. Let's go ahead and check the ring gap. We're going to start with a 12,000.012. That goes in pretty good. We're going to jump to a 0.014. So that's kind of tight going in. Doesn't go in. So I'm going to say this is like a 13.5, 0.0135. Okay. Let's check number 2. Again, we're going to start with the 12. I think BMW spec max is like up to 16 thousandths. So we're well within that. 12 is loose. $14 is tight. Can I get 14 in? I'm going to say that's a 13. So we've just done the top compression ring at the number 1 position, 10 millimeter from the deck on bores 1 and 2. I'm going to go ahead and finish 4 through 6. Then we'll come back and we'll move the ring down. Okay? So we record all 6 bore gaps. We're going to go ahead and go to the middle position, which is the 42.5 millimeter down from the deck height. So first we're going to use the piston to kind of get it somewhat close. Then we're going to go ahead and set our piston. So we have the rings in the bore, all 6 bores at the second position, 42.5 millimeter from the deck. So we'll repeat our gap measurement. All right, we'll start with our 12 thousandths. That goes. Go to our 14 thousandths. That does not go similarly. So I'll say this is right around a 13 thousandths ring end gap. Let's take a look at number 2. 14 does not go. 12 goes. So this is a 13 thousandths end gap. Alright, so we've completed the measurements on 1 through 6 for the top compression ring at the number 2 middle position. We're going to go ahead now and get the rings down to the bottom position, which is the 75 millimeter position, and then we're going to repeat our measurements. We're going to use the piston just to get us down there close. Okay, so we've set rings in bores 1 through 6 for the bottom position, 75 millimeter from the deck. So we're going to go ahead and check these ring gap measurements, and then we're going to move on to number 2. So now we're finished with the top compression ring. We need to remove it. So I wanted to kind of show you guys when we want to remove these rings. First thing we want to do is to flip it up vertically and get both our fingers in here and compress the ring to overlap the ends and pull it out. Okay, so what I did was that I had the ring like this, I inverted it like this, and then I overlapped it to my hands and pulled it out. We don't want to score the bore or anything like that. We've got the number 2 rings positioned similarly how we had the number 1 right at the top of the bore. But before we go, I wanted to show you guys this. So you can see on this that you see it's marked top and N, so this goes on the top. If you also notice the back side, there's a scraper right here, right? So this always has to be done. The second compression ring has a scraper on the bottom that scrapes the oil back down into the pan. So make sure your scraper's on the bottom, letters and numbers on top. And if you notice, I'm putting this ring in with the gap over here, and they're all pretty much the same. The gaps over here, 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 and here. Again, if you recall, a number 1 compression ring, the gap was over here. So then the number 2 is 180 apart. Just trying to mimic of how I'm going to have them installed in the piston when they go inside the bore. Okay, so we're just going to repeat the same process of checking the ring end gaps on the number 2. So you know, I'm not going to go through it in detail again, but it's just the same process. And similarly, same process for the number 3 oil control ring. These engines calls for the oil control rings end gaps to be measured as well. Not all engine does, but this particular one does, and it's I believe it's up to 20 thousandths ring gap that you're supposed to have. Okay, all right guys, thanks.